what about the fact that as we look at the text, we know that the Messiah is son of David, son of David, son of David, son of David. If he's virgin born, then Joseph is not his father. How can he be the son of David? Two answers. Number one, the Messiah was not just the son of David, he was also greater than David. He was the son of David, and he was greater than David. How could he do both? He was virgin born. He was virgin born. We saw looking at Psalm 110 that he is exalted more than David. We see in Daniel 7, he comes in the clouds of heaven. He sits at the right hand of God, according to Psalm 110. So, he is greater than David. That's number one. How is he greater than David? By being born of a virgin. Son of God, and yet son of David. How is he also son of David? He comes through the line of Miriam. He comes through the line of Miriam. He is born of a woman who is a descendant of David. I believe that's the best way to read Luke's genealogy, and I'll come back to that in a moment. Looking at Luke's genealogy and understanding that she, Miriam, the mother, is a descendant of David. You say, wait a second, where does it say in the Bible that you can trace a descendant through the mother? Well, if there was no earthly father in a certain case to carry on the line, like the daughters of Zelophehad, Numbers 27, Numbers 36, then inheritance rights could come through the woman. They could come through the woman as long as she married within the tribe, which would be the same case here. So that's the first thing. Inheritance rights could go to the woman if there was no man. Second thing, you have in 1 Chronicles chapter 2, there's a genealogy, verses 34, 35 in this section, and it mentions Sheshan had no sons. Sheshan had no sons, only daughters. And then one of the daughters marries an Egyptian. And then the genealogy continues. Now, hang on. The genealogy continues as if it's the genealogy of the father. The genealogy continues, even the way it's laid out. You'll see it in the New Jewish Version, for example, the translation. You see how the genealogy continues. Why does it continue the genealogy of this man, this man, this man, this man, if it stops with the daughter? It continues it because it doesn't stop with the daughter. It's not going through an Egyptian. It's not going through the Egyptian unless the Egyptian is adopted and considered part of the family. Either way, the lineage, he did not have the lineage of the father, the daughter did. So in this particular case, it's in a genealogy that the lineage goes through the daughter, not the son, because there was no son. So we actually have precedent for that. So if we can demonstrate that Yeshua is a blood descendant of David through Miriam, his mother, and the rights to the royal throne through Joseph, his adopted father, then it works perfectly. And he is also greater than David. But that leaves the question, but aren't the genealogies contradictory anyway? And can we even argue for a split second that Miriam's genealogy is preserved in Luke, the 3rd chapter? Does that even work? These are fair questions. But just bear in mind, Matthew puts the genealogy up front, beginning of his book. Luke puts the genealogy, chapter 3, in a major portion of the book. They weren't embarrassed. They weren't embarrassed about the genealogies. Otherwise, why put them there? And the gospel authors did not just put accounts there and then later editors let them stand side by side when everyone knew they were hopelessly contradictory. It makes no sense if you're trying to promote your faith. Obviously, there is much more to the story. So we'll take up the question of apparent contradictions in our next lecture. What about the larger issue that the genealogies are hopelessly contradictory? Again, the first problem I have with that assumption is the genealogies are given pride of place in Matthew and Luke. They're put in very strategic parts. Matthew starts off with this. This is the book of the genealogy, or the book of the descent of Yeshua the Messiah, son of David, son of Abraham. He puts that in a prominent place. And then Luke, after Yeshua's immersion in water with John the Immerser, and then traces him back all the way to the beginning, all the way back to Adam. So in point of fact, there's no question that the gospel authors wanted these accounts to be made. You say, yeah, well, maybe Matthew wrote his thing over here and Luke wrote his over here, and they never compared notes. Yeah, but there were those that then received these as scripture. And there were those that then edited these together and said these are part of the four gospels, and we take these accounts as secret, the Besorah, the good news. So if it was so obvious that they were completely contradictory, you just wonder how that actually happened. Now, there's no question that there are apparent contradictions. I don't argue that for a split second. I would point out that you have even more apparent contradictions in accounts in the Hebrew Bible. Even some historical narratives that talk about how this one knew this one and how this one did, sometimes they seem to contradict themselves. And with the genealogies, you often have contradictions. So what we need to do again is that same method, not of accepting error, not of winking at error, not of saying, well, I believe no matter what, but saying, okay, let's look at this sympathetically to see if there is a way to resolve the apparent contradictions. So Luke gives us more names than Matthew does. But Matthew is systematically giving his genealogy around three groups of 14. In fact, he repeats one name. You have to count it as twice to get to the 14. That may have been the genealogy he had because there were different genealogical records. And he notices, okay, we can divide this into three groups of 14, or maybe that's how the record was divided. And it could be the three groups of 14 was because the name David in Hebrew has a numeric value of 14. Dalet 4, Vav 6, Dalet 4. So is that why he's saying 14, 14, 14, David, 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 this is the son of David, this is the greater David, this is the Messiah? Could be. The fact that Luke gives more names, you have that when you compare genealogies within the Hebrew Bible. That's not uncommon, that one author will give you extra names. So one is saying this is the literal son of this one, the literal son of this one, the literal son of this one. The other is saying this one is the descendant of this one, the descendant of this one, the descendant of this. That's simple, no problem there. But let's look at this. Matthew traces it David, Solomon. Luke traces it David, Nathan. All right? So we've got our first change there. Clearly, we're being told that the royal line, from David to Solomon to Rehoboam, the royal line of each one who is king goes through David, Solomon. We don't argue that. Okay? We simply say that the Messiah did not have to be a son of Solomon or a son of these other kings to be considered the son of David and therefore the Messiah. But we see the line goes through Solomon. This is the royal line, all right? Each royal king, and then all the way down to Joseph. So Joseph was in the lineage of the royal line. That's what Matthew is telling us. But when we get to Josiah, then Jeconiah, then Shealtiel, then Zerubbabel. Well, Josiah, Jeconiah, who's actually the grandson of Josiah, Shealtiel, Zerubbabel. Now, when we are in Luke's gospel, we have Neri, Shealtiel, and Zerubbabel, and then it diverges from there. Well, after Zerubbabel, if it diverges, that's no problem, right? That's no problem because different children, you just trace it through different ones. That's not a problem. But it seems to be a problem when you have Jeconiah, Shealtiel, Zerubbabel, versus Neri, Shealtiel, Zerubbabel. If you look carefully, I don't want to take the time to get into this, but if you look carefully in 1 Chronicles, the 3rd chapter, and when you look at the descent here of these men, these related men, 1 Chronicles chapter 3, and the sons of Pedaiah were Zerubbabel and Shimei, and the sons of, the sons of Pedaiah were Zerubbabel and Shimei, but elsewhere in the Hebrew Scriptures, he is known as what? Son of Shealtiel. Son of Shealtiel. How could that be? A Levirate marriage. What's a Levirate marriage? That is, we'll say, Joseph dies. We'll say Joseph Schwartz dies. And of course, they didn't have names like that in ancient Israel, but to make the point, Joseph Schwartz dies and he has no children. He has a younger brother, Samuel Schwartz. He is married. Well, according to the Deuteronomic law, now Samuel, the younger brother, would marry the widow, Joseph's widow. We'd have two wives. Yeah, that would have been according to the law. Marries the widow, and then the first child that she has through him is now considered to be her her late husband's child, Joseph's child. So Samuel is the biological father, but the lineage then continues on Joseph's end. So when you have accounts within the Hebrew Bible where it mentions the same man and two different fathers, that could easily be the explanation for us. We may have that once or twice in these genealogies, that you have the same name and then you have different fathers. There is even the possible argument that there was a Levirate marriage with Miriam's father, and that's how things are traced, or Joseph's father. There are arguments like that. But once you realize, okay, you might have the same person, and he has his biological father, and then the lineage is traced through his biological father's older brother. So you have two possible different names for the same person. It works fine. And all I'm saying is the same way we try to resolve these issues within the Hebrew Scriptures, you apply them here, and it works out just the same way. So that would mean then that when we get to Luke's gospel, that Luke is telling us that that Yeshua was known. And we'll just look at the way it's phrased here in Luke chapter 3. Luke chapter 3, Yeshua himself began to be at 30 years old. He was being, as was supposed, the son of Joseph, which was the son of Heli, the son of Mattat, etc. There are two ways to read it. Everyone thought he was the son of Joseph. He was actually the son of God, and Joseph was the son of Heli. Well, that's a different name than you have in Matthew. Well, it's possible that Joseph's father, there was a Levirate marriage in that case, just like with Zerubbabel having two different fathers listed in the Hebrew Scriptures. Could be the exact same thing here. Or it could be that we're being told this is Miriam's genealogy. And he was 30 years old, being, it was supposed, the son of Joseph, but actually the son of Miriam's father, Heli. You say, I don't know about that. It's exactly the same way that you try to reconcile and work out contradictions or apparent contradictions within the Hebrew Scriptures with the genealogies, and you got a lot more of those than these. So basically, there are good, workable explanations for all of these. Good, workable explanations, and if in fact Miriam is listed as from the line of David as well, then you have further verification of blood descent from David, and then adoption into the royal line through Joseph, and more importantly, through being the Son of God.